Hello everybody, today we're going to do an installation video on the Zero Glide nut that's available through Gold Tone. I've heard a lot about it, I've never used one, so I'm going to show you how to put it on the Banjo. Alright, before we get started, some of the tools that you're going to need is you're going to need a small hammer, some kind of a small block of wood. I've got this dowel rod that I'm going to use. You're going to need a piece of 120 grit sandpaper. You're going to need some painter's tape or masking tape, and you're going to need a razor blade. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started, the first thing you're going to do is you want to loosen your strings up and move them off to the side of the banjo neck. And it's real important to keep them attached because you're going to need those when you go to line your nut back up. The next thing we want to do is we want to take our razor blade and we need to score the back of the nut along the neck and along the headstock. And the reason for that is when we go to tap on it to loosen the nut up, we want to make sure we don't chip the finish. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to take our dowel rod, piece of wood or whatever you've got, and we want to just lightly tap on the nut. And what that'll do is that'll break the bond with the glue in there, and then we can slide our nut right out at that point. Okay, the next step that we've got to do is we've got to sand the Zero Glide nut to the same width as the nut that was on the banjo. Now, the Zero Glide nut, I don't know if you can see it here, but it has two steps on the nut. We want to make sure we don't file that side. We want to file the back smooth side. And this is where we're going to use our 120 grit sandpaper. We want to make sure we go nice and slow so we don't take too much off. All right, there we've got it fitting all the way to the bottom. One thing you want to make sure you look at too, when you pull your old nut out, look down in here and see if there's any old glue that's left from when the previous nut was in there. If there is, take your razor blade and scrape it out. But now we've got this one sanded to the right width, goes all the way to the bottom of the slot. Now I got to be honest with you, this wasn't a quick process. It took me about 20-25 minutes to sand the thickness to get it to the right thickness. So make sure you go slow and take your time. The next thing we want to do is we want to put the fourth and the first string in the slot. And we want to look and make sure that we've got the right alignment as far as the strings lining up on the fretboard. And once we got that to where it looks good, we want to take a piece of this tape and we just want to make sure that we take a piece just big enough to hold the nut in place so we can turn the banjo over and mark where we got to trim on the edges. you want to use a good sharp point pencil. And mark the nut the width of the neck. So as you can see by the markings, we've got quite a bit that we have to take off of the sides of this nut to get it to fit up properly. So we go back to our sandpaper, and again, slow and steady wins the race. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Okay, now that we've got it sanded to the proper width, the next thing we got to do is sand the height, and we want to sand from the bottom. But on this nut, there's two steps. There's a lower step and an upper step. We got to sand the bottom until the upper step is even with the top of the fret. So we got to make sure that this top of the fretboard. We got to make sure this upper step is even with the top of the fretboard. So we do that by, again, sanding from the bottom of the nut. So once you get the nut filed to the right height, you want to pick the right size fret. You want a fret that's real close to the one that you already have in your banjo. And then on the fret, you can see where the tang is. There's a short side and a long side. The short side goes up against the nut. The long side, it fits on the fretboard. Now that we have the right fret picked out, we've got it in there, we want to put the strings on and get it tuned to pitch. Okay, once we tune to pitch, we want to listen. We want to play each string open to see if we have a buzz. If we have a buzz, then we go to the next size bigger fret. I'm good here. So we have no buzz. So the next thing that we want to do is take our pencil and we want to mark the fret even with the nut. Okay, and that's where we're going to trim that fret. So once we have it, we want to take the pliers and we just want to trim the end of our fret off. Okay, then we want to take the fret, just hit it on the end of the sandpaper. And to smooth the edges up and take any sharp corners off. All right, now what we want to do is we want to take some glue. They suggest using super glue. I don't like to use super glue. I like to use wood glue, and the reason why is because I like to have a little extra time to work with it to get it set exactly where I want it before the glue sets up. Super glue sets up so quick that it's just hard to work with. So you just put a little drop on each side of the nut, place it in the slot. Now we're ready to seat our fret. All right, so now we got the fret set into place. They suggest gluing on the fret. I'm not doing it. I am not putting glue on my fretboard. I'm just going to let the pressure of the strings hold it in. It should hold it in just fine, because most of the time when we change strings on banjo, we only change them one at a time anyway. I'm not taking the chance of putting glue on my fretboard. That's just me. If you all guys want to do that, knock your socks off. We put our strings back in the slots. I'll work around my cam tuners. Well, come on. So that's the good thing about using the wood glue, is we can make any final adjustments that we need to make. And we can start tightening our strings up. Take them back to tune. Alright, so now we got the strings back on. We got it tuned to pitch. No buzz. And we've just installed the zero glide nut on this banjo. Stay tuned and I'll give you a demo of before and after so you can hear what it sounds like. This is before the zero nut installation. Here's the sound after the installation of the zero glide nut.